It's 3:01, so we could start. We have quorum.
I'm going to reboot because I'm having an internet problem. So I'm going to be gone for 30 seconds.
Okay.
Nice color of wall behind Brian.
Brian's frozen. We'll give him 30 seconds.
James, I haven't seen your face in a half a year.
We have. We've seen the picture.
This thing right here, this camera, for some reason works when I turn it on, but it doesn't work with Zoom. I have no idea why.
Okay. Brian, are you back with us?
He could be frozen.
I think he must be.
I'm cold, but I'm not frozen.
Okay. Well, we still have quorum with 1, 2, 3,
Yep.
5. Well, Brian fixes his technology issues, so we'll call to order because we are 3 minutes past. And for the minutes on November the 18th, has anyone got any comments? I just have one small comment under section 6.3. It referenced the climate resilience work and made a link to the Ashland Food Project. And I was just wondering if that was clear enough or what it should say. I'll go back into them here. 6.3. Yeah, I didn't, the second sentence, project suggestions, including collaborating with the Ashland Food Bank on outreach regarding dehydrating food to reduce food waste, because the project's on climate resilience and adaptation. I didn't understand the full link there, unless I missed that part of the conversation or the link in the conversation at the meeting. Can anyone remember back?
I was confused about that too, but I didn't comment.
I remember food being mentioned, so, but maybe we didn't clarify in what context.
I remember Steph, I can also go back and watch the video. I might have gotten the summary wrong. I remember Steph mentioned that as a potential project, and there was some discussion about where that might belong, whether it was, whether it was climate resilience or the responsible consumption.
Okay. So maybe we could move that sentence to below the water use and just say to bear in mind any links to already ongoing projects, and then reference the one that Steph mentioned.
Will do.
Okay. Are there any other comments on the minutes? Okay.
I move to approve the minutes with the correction we mentioned.
I second the motion.
All those in favor? Okay. And then announcements. Our next meeting is back to the final Wednesday, or the fourth Wednesday of the month, which is January the 27th. And then are there any other announcements from commissioners? Or reports from members of other commissions? Okay. And we received 2 written testimonies. One about a get-together this Friday from Laurie Kaplan. So that should be in everyone's email box. Elizabeth sent that through. And the other one on leaf blowers, where someone's asked us to look at leaf blowers. Has everyone had a chance to read both those communications?
Yeah, I've seen both of them. I want to just make a comment on the leaf blowers. I think that subject has come up in the last year, as I recall, for us. So it's a good reminder that there are people out there who care about it. And I did personally respond to the person just to say, I encourage you to stay in touch on the issue and write to city councilors. And I hope that we will, be discussing the subject at some point as well. I think what we talked about, we tried to get something going for electric, plug-in and battery operated leaf blowers, which I think there's been some movement on, but I think there's a bigger issue of the air pollution and noise pollution that's generated by the leaf blowers. And there are a lot of people in the community that care, but it's also a complicated issue because of the people that use it as a tool.
Yeah. People seem to be people that don't like the leaf blowers and then people that like the leaf blowers.
Love them, yes. But there are communities in the Western United States that have severely limited their use. And I think that's what I said to the person. I said, if you want the city of Ashland to do something, I encourage you to research communities that have done something and share that with city council, certainly.
Okay, that's a great suggestion. Brian?
The Climate Policy Commission at their last meeting, they have a whole list of things they want to tackle. And I think they assigned a member, Commissioner Gary Schaaf, to do a one-page paper on this subject. And he was tasked with delivering it to us. And so it kind of brings up the whole bigger issue of how these two commissions are going to work together, I think.
Okay. So are we waiting for Gary Schaaf to get in touch with us, or shall I?
Well, I had a long phone call with the head of the CPC, Mr. Barth, and he said yes, but he wasn't exactly sure if he was going to contact Bex or what. So it just kind of, I'm not exactly sure, and it's again kind of seems unclear how we're
Okay.
going to address these issues.
Well, since the submission was on the leaf blowers to us, we've heard that CPC is doing something there, I'll take the action to contact Gary. Sorry, Elizabeth.
The woman sent the same message to the Climate Policy Commission. So you guys can, of course, reach out, but they've also seen it too.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take the action to get in touch with Gary and Rick. Okay, and then we move on to reports from the council and the staff. So, Risa.
Do you want to say anything about the presentation to council last night on behalf of the CCOC?
Oh, yes.
Because I don't think it's on our agenda.
It's not. So yeah, we can say it at any time. I can cover now before handing over to Stu for the staff update. Risa and I presented the annual report last night to the City Council. We did the presentation based on the items that we agreed on the last meeting, which I then wrote up and submitted to Elizabeth. So she had submitted that and we were able to give an update. And I think it was well received. Stu was observing. And yeah, so we've done our annual report presentation. Are there any questions on that?
Do you have an outline or like something, so we don't have to watch the video if we want to hear what the report was?
There was an outline that we submitted, and then there was also a presentation. Unfortunately, there was a slight communication with the presentation. But what I can do is circulate the presentation and the outline that was submitted to everyone on this commission.
That'd be nice.
And we can all see. Okay.
Thank you.
I would say that if you do want to watch the video, it's right at the very beginning of the meeting. So you don't have to.
Oh, okay.
scroll very far.
Oh, great. Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah, that's true. And you get my Christmas tree in the background because I'm at home doing the presentation.
But that was a very nice touch.
Thanks, I put it up just for that. I went and hunted it down. Okay, Stu, on the staff update?
Yeah, sure. I'll just give you a few highlights of things that have been ongoing and some things coming up. And if anyone has burning questions, we can talk about it briefly or follow up after. So let's see, currently, get to the beginning here. So everybody knows we finished the public chargers. We had one of them already go bad, unfortunately, which just happens, manufacturing defect. Fortunately, we have 9 that still work in that spot, so no worries. We're getting that one fixed right away. We have continued rolling out the electric vehicle incentives, the electric bikes, electric cars, which was part of the Bonneville Environmental Foundation ZEVI Fund grant that I wrote earlier in the year. Let's see. Bex and I also finished the submission of a material supply or material flow grant to DEQ. So we'll see what comes of that. It could be an interesting project. Right now, I'm putting a bit of effort into, as I mentioned, the zero emission vehicle incentives, but also we're working with a couple of people on the policy commission to propose some ways that we might expand on-bill financing for home energy loans. So that I expect will be a big conversation coming up. Rogue to Go is about to finish up. Actually, we need to get the final data from that project. I need to write my final report for DEQ before the end of the month. So Rogue to Go is doing good. I believe Risa can tell us at some other point how it will be doing in the future. But I think it's expanded and moving into Medford and on a good track at the moment. So I'm getting ready to hand over everything I have about Rogue to Go will now go to someone else. Let's see.
And can I just say, Stu?
Yes, please.
Yeah, you and I just need to be in touch because, yeah, I don't need to bore them with my efforts, but we just need to connect around that.
Agree. Let's see. We're hoping to put together an employee loan for e-bikes for city employees, which is kind of like a random thing, but I thought you folks would be interested to know about it. Let's see, Bridget here, she can give us a little update in just a second about what she's working on. But it's been so nice to have Bridget on hand to help with these things. A couple other things, big things that I'm working on with Policy Commission and will come to you folks eventually is a master planning for the electric utility. Also, eventually, I'm hoping to get into the idea of a home energy score program for Ashland. That's another, I think, fairly obvious policy choice we could make as a community that just requires some bandwidth and some buy-in from everybody. So there are many other things I could talk about, like the hopefully future chargers at the Grove that I'm excited about. But I'm going to leave it there for now. And if anyone has a quick question, happy to take that. If you have a not quick question, then let's talk another time. Oh, and then also, Bridget, please tell us about what you're working on.
Yeah, I just wanted to share with you all 2 updates. The first is the website. So Elizabeth, I don't know if I'm able to share my screen real quick, but just to show you guys a quick little screenshot of it to see what's in the works. Let me just pull that up for you guys. So here's a little sneak preview of the landing page for our climate department or climate section. So this is what we have right now. Again, this is just a draft. We're still working on it, working with the web developer. So yeah, and we're also working on one of the pages for our pillars, and still, working on some content for that. So hoping that at the next meeting we can show this to you more in depth and actually get some feedback. But just wanted to let you know that that was happening. And oh yeah, Risa.
I'm just wondering if it looks really good, the new look. I'm just wondering if it's appropriate to include on that website some of the low-hanging fruit things that happen, like say plastic bag ordinance, even though it's not in effect at the moment. Things like bottle and can baskets downtown, the Road to Go program, what goes in recycle, how to divert beyond commingle, like low hanging fruit things that do you think that they have a place in that is a question.
Yeah, I mean, I think they do. I mean, I think, for example, one of the pages is about consuming less. So, I mean, I think that could be a place where we address, like you're saying, recycling and commingling. We're also gonna have a resources page, which will have all the city resources, so people can have easy access to all of the programs. So I think you bring up good points that we can try to incorporate in.
That's great. And if I can help in any way with brainstorming, please reach out.
Okay, thank you.
So Bridget and Stu, I have one other question about the website. I think it looks great too. I like immediately, it seemed really appealing and user-friendly look to it, which is great. What I wonder about is in the future, like as there are initiatives from whatever part of city government or even community that might be appropriate for the website, what are the mechanics of updating the site? Like, I think one of the really important things is that information stay current and be accurate. And so let's say we have a commission meeting and someone says, oh, I was looking at the site and this particular thing is really not quite right, or we should be adding these links. Can you give us an idea of what the sort of dynamics of updating the site are going to be like once it's public?
I think that we're hoping that the core content of the pages won't be needed to be updated that much, but as for like what you're saying, commission up more.
Would be more links. It would be more links to other things that I'm thinking.
Yeah. So Stu, I don't know if you can answer that better.
Yeah, I can interject. I think like Bridget said, we're hoping that the core messaging of the campaign that this website is being built around is going to be pretty durable. But I think there will definitely be programs that we're adding or updating. And, also with this website, we're trying to keep it fairly concise and easy to browse. So we're probably not going to have all the program details of such and such a program right on that page. It'll be a link out to wherever that program lives. So yeah, we're definitely keeping an eye towards keeping it easy to maintain. But also, and this maybe feed into the next thing Bridget's going to tell you about, is that we should have hopefully some other vehicles to do more messaging coming up.
Okay.
I'll just stop there because I don't want to steal Bridget's update.
James?
Hey, Bridget, thanks for showing that work in progress. It looks great. I noticed there is a picture of the bike rentals on there. And I'm not sure if that's a project that we're going to be continuing on. And so I just wanted to make you aware of that.
Yeah, no, thanks for pointing out. I think our web developer was just pulling some photos, but we will reevaluate them when we get in there and edit it a bit more.
Yeah, and that's exactly the kind of feedback that we want to get from you folks when we bring you the draft next time around. Because I noticed that picture as well, James. And a lot of this, the draft of this website was just kind of like my photo library of climate stuff. And they just sort of plugged whatever they thought looked good in. So yeah, I think we're definitely going to want to swap that one out for sure.
Cool. Well, and the second update is that we're going to be making a Facebook page for Ashland Climate and Energy Programs to hopefully engage with a different type of audience and also do some really in the moment type posting. So I'm hoping that at the next meeting we can present that to you a bit more, and we'll hopefully have had the page made by then. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Bridget.
That's great news. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so we won't have a council update as Steph isn't here. So we'll move on to agenda item 6 and the commission monthly column in the sneak preview. Has everyone had an opportunity to read Marnie's article? Are there any comments?
Yeah, I have not read it.
Risa?
I read the article. I really liked it. It was very positive, upbeat, peppy. And I just had one comment that I sent an email to Marnie last night about, and that was, it's just a minor little thing, is that she was talking about Ashland Electric, which completely confused me. And so it made my mind go to like, oh, it must be like a bike shop or something. But then I realized, oh, no, she's talking about Ashland Utilities. So I just suggested that she replace the 2 times it's mentioned Ashland Utilities instead of Ashland Electric. That's all.
Okay. I thought the same. I thought it was an upbeat, enabling article that just was a nice, yeah, chatting us through things. Larry, did you have a comment?
No, I just was saying I did not have a chance to read it, but I totally trust the the review already
Okay.
given. And I think that's a really good point, Risa, because I've called Ashland Utilities, Ashland Electric, but Ashland Utilities is what people understand. It
So-
is, and it is what it is. Yeah, that's great.
If we want to be totally precise, we would say Ashland Electric Utility customers.
Well, we want to be that, Stu. I was wondering if we should say department.
No, don't say.
No.
So,
Could you update Marnie, Risa, with our
Yeah.
preciseness? Because I want to be precise too.
okay, so Stu, you call it Ashland Electric / utility, or just 3 words?
Yes.
Okay. And then based on that change, this is due for the sneak preview on the 19th of January. So based on that change, are we happy to approve the article at this meeting now?
I move that we approve Marnie's article with the little clarification, Ashland Electric Utility,
Second,
not utilities. Right, okay.
And James, did you
I said I second that.
second? All those in favor? Okay. The next article is water conservation. Risa, do you have an update on this article?
Yes, ma'am, I do. Oh, yes,
So
I,
Lisa, can we do this sort of together?
Oh, Okay.
Oh, of
Right
course.
there. You're both on either side of me, so
Right,
that's why I'm pointing like that.
good.
I wasn't gonna do it alone, Larry, but.
Oh, good. Okay, great.
But it occurred to me that the reason why that there's a shift in the writing of the article. And so I'm wondering if this is an appropriate moment to share with the commission the shift.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so. I was gonna just share the meeting that we had, which includes all of this stuff. So does that make sense, Risa?
Yes, except for our agenda, we need to nail the next article.
Yeah, but that's in here.
So we have time to update on the water in the next agenda item. So should we
Well,
just,
I'm just talking about combining the two. I'm fine to, we can talk about the article, which I think myself and Brian committed to working on, and with assistance from Risa. And then that goes right into the water group update.
okay, so is it easier for you to update on everything? I think at this stage, we need to know if there'll be an article.
Yes,
Next.
Well, I think that we've been concerned, maybe, this is pretty short. It's about, 2 minutes of, I can share the notes that includes this, and then we can, because we might want to have a discussion about whether we do it.
Okay,
but before we go to the water task force, we're on the sneak preview, and we
Okay.
also need to discuss after the water article, what's the next one? in the
Okay, so
queue?
let's do the water article. I'm still on board and committed to writing with, hopefully, Brian, that article and getting it submitted on the timeline that we've agreed to.
perfect.
And we'll go into more detail in a minute. So what do we have in the queue for April?
So
Which-
then the next one is an article from me with a very general title that we haven't quite pinned down yet on COVID-19 and sustainability. I'm aware we did the single use and masks for an article prior to Jamie's. So I'm just having a think about the actual theme of that article. So I'm definitely would still like that one in the queue, but I think we need a couple more articles in the queue as well. Has anyone got any other ideas? My answer phone will pick up now.
Hello? Hello?
I can volunteer that we are going to have a variety of different topic areas associated with the outreach plan and the new website, which might be appropriate for adapting into articles.
That would be great. And we can even promote the Facebook site and the website.
So if we did that, there could be 4 different ones.
Oof, okay. What do you know what they would?
I do. Would you like to hear?
Yes, please.
Preparedness. And I don't know, be careful what to call this one. Using less fossil fuel is one. Or electrifying, call it whatever you want. Another is just efficiency, good old efficiency. And also that goes with reducing consumption. I think those are in the same category. And then also renewable energy.
Okay. And what's your timescale on your website and your Facebook page?
Well, Facebook should be pretty soon, but the website, I think we're hoping by March, it'll be all done. That's the plan right now. It might be done before that, but we'll see.
So I'm going to have a think about the theme of mine, but because mine's being published in April, I could look to tying in on sustainability, COVID-19, but then connectedness in the community and looking at the website and the Facebook page as a part of connectedness. And then following that, we could have the 4 themes and articles on that. That could work quite nicely.
Yeah, and we certainly invite your involvement in making those articles.
Okay.
That sounds great, Stu.
Jamie has something to say.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll get postponed like it did this year, but the first weekend of May is the Household Hazardous Waste event traditionally. So I guess we'll have to play that by ear because it was postponed by several months. But maybe we could put that as a tentative possibility in there and see how things are going.
That sounds good. We can see, yeah, near the time. We don't have to put them in order until we're about 3 months away. So that's great. Okay. So that's April. And then another suggestion from Jamie, 4 from Stu. So we have quite a few ideas there. Risa, do you have another one?
No, I'm just wondering, so then tentatively, Jamie might write an article on the household hazardous waste for May. So then the great Stu suggestions might come after May. Did I get that right? Or not, because if it doesn't happen, and if Jamie may have something pressing that she wants to convey or not.
Right now.
No, if the household hazardous waste event doesn't happen, is it possible that, or that could be an opportunity for these other articles to pop up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, I won't make a comment on that just yet, but one thing to consider is, since it is the first weekend of May, depending on, I can't remember when the sneak comes out, does it come out, you know, on the 2nd of May? It might make more sense for it to be the April article if they have it. So what I can do is see, you know, if they have a crystal ball over at Rogue Disposal, you know, and guess on whether they're going to have it or not. My hunch is that it will be postponed because, you know, we just had it basically. So I don't know. I'll find out what they
There's
think.
different ways we can look at that, Jamie, once you know more.
Yeah.
If we end up having a whole article about it, or the other thing is, depending on, like, the ideas I'm getting about the COVID-19 and sustainability is, we've seen a community that really wants to be part of the bigger solution and get involved. So that's another thing that could be just mentioned within that article in terms of community connectedness. So let's come back and if it's happening, and then we'll work out the timeline. That sounds good.
Great, thanks, y'all. That puts us, you know, well into 2021. So thank you for all your ideas and help.
We also were looking at different methods of communication that we could change our articles in and get information out there. So I really like the idea of having a climate, energy and action plan Facebook or climate and energy Facebook page, because this is a really good means to get information out to the community. And even if it gets reposted in other pages or Instagram sites, then it's a useful way of getting that information out. So we can think about how we'd want to get tips, information, events, community outreach into that page. The other ideas we had, I think Marnie was going to look into Ashland Memes and a couple other sites of communicating through that. And Risa and we also met with Laurie Kaplan on the Spotlight, and she's happy for any information. They're going to have every 2 weeks, they're going to have an article called Spotlight in what can you remember? Tidings, yeah. Thanks, Risa. And offered us having space there as well. So that's really good as well, that we can utilize that at any time. They have a few in the pipeline and we can come with more. And the other idea, yeah, the more we can do to promote what Ashland's doing here in different avenues, the better. Are there any other comments on the different channels for articles and future outreach? Okay. SEEP project update. So this is based on the 3 groups and the 3 priority projects that we got involved in at the last meeting. Should we take them in this order? So responsible consumption and single use. Jamie, Risa, and I got together as a project group. Does anyone want to give an update from that meeting? Risa, Jamie? Me?
Go ahead.
Okay, I will. So it was really good getting back together because we'd had a lot of discussions pre-COVID on single use in the food service. And so we discussed consumption, the bigger consumption, and then we also looked specifically at single use. And pre-COVID, we were very focused, and we'd had discussions with various people about this in terms of an ordinance to replicate what Portland, what Eugene, what other cities in the United States were doing. And I had noticed, and even our discussion had shifted. We didn't necessarily want to focus on the ordinance, and we're not going to focus on the ordinance for the beginning of our work here. We're going to focus more on, for a number of reasons. One, we feel that we could do this by providing an alternative and making that viable. So it is about changing the system and making that a more desirable option for people rather than coming in with a rule. And one is because these businesses have been hardest hit by COVID, so we don't want to just go in with an ordinance. The other is we've seen successive programs such as Rogue to Go during this time where the community do want to get involved in programs like that. So we feel by getting the information out to community members and to also look at more that we can package around alternatives such as Rogue to Go would be our initial step. So we're coming back together in early January, I think, or later on in December, to look at actions that we're going to take and put in place a strategy and then build a number of actions. So one will be, how do we promote Rogue to Go? The next might be about bring your own cutlery. And so it will all be about the different things we can do that do not involve an ordinance that would tackle single use within food services. And we ended also up having a wider discussion about making sure that we had the foundation in place. So what is recyclable in the community, what's not recyclable and why, and to frame it within these messages. Because so many people, I go into places and it's single use and I don't want to use that cup, and they say it's okay, it's compostable, but we don't have that infrastructure in the Rogue Valley, so it's not actually compostable, it's still going to landfill. So it's making sure that we have the wider messages as well as the alternatives to single use. And so we're coming back to focus on exactly what we can do and what our actions are when we next come back together. Are there any comments or questions or suggestions that could help us, or additions from Risa and Jamie?
Well, I would just add that we kind of decided, let's really promote low-hanging fruit, things that already exist, and figure out a system so that we can have a continuous, exciting loop that communicates to the community about the low-hanging fruit. And when the low-hanging fruit is solid, and then we can move on to more complex things. And it is possible that one day our state will pass some kind of a single-use ordinance, and, you know, we'll be more on board with that.
Ready, and we'll be ready. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it'll be the way we do things and the way our system works. Mhm.
And just, it occurs to me, listening to you talk about our meeting, is that there could also be a sneak preview article in that at some point during the year, as we clarify our action plan. Just,
Good idea. Mhm. Okay, the next update is from the climate resilience adaptation team.
Hey, Brian, why don't you go ahead? I wasn't there yesterday.
Marnie and James and I met by phone, maybe 2 weeks ago, and then we had a meeting scheduled yesterday, and Marnie and I met. And a couple of things. After our first meeting, the three of us had been interested in kind of having a small group like we had get together with one or two or a small number of people that wouldn't violate quorum rules from the CPC. And so I sent out an invitation, and for reasons I'm not exactly sure, that didn't go over well. So maybe people can address that. But I subsequently had a conversation with Richard Barth. And then yesterday, Marnie and I met, and a couple of things I think I certainly and Marnie weren't aware of. I don't know how many of you are aware of, but the CPC has put out quite a list of projects they want to take on. And I certainly wasn't aware of that, as much as I tried to stay up to date. And so I think what kind of came out of the meeting that we had was that there needs to, I think, be more of a communication of how our two commissions are going to work, and more of an integration on that. And I think what we've kind of felt is maybe the chairs of the two commissions should get together and figure out how they'd like to do that, or invite certain members of each commission that might be interested in doing that. An example of just an item that came up was in the last CPC meeting, they talked about gas-powered lawn blower machines, and they tasked one person with developing a paper on that. And the task, as far as I understood it from Richard Barth, was to take it to the CCOC. And so I don't know, okay, they bring it to the CCOC, what are we then supposed to do with that? So it seems to me that, go ahead.
No, I just have a question, because the project is on climate change resilience. And the description Marnie gave me is, as climate change worsens and accelerates, community members will increasingly experience extreme events and impacts that affect their health, safety, food security, economic well-being, and other facets of daily life. Through outreach, education, and community building, we can help residents prepare for and become resilient in the face of fires, disease, heat waves, and other climate impacts. Those who are most vulnerable to climate impacts will need to be the focus of such efforts. So that's the project that this group agreed on. So I'm missing the link.
Well, that was, so as we got together, you know, we start brainstorming about what we're interested in doing. And what came out of our meeting with Marnie, my meeting with Marnie yesterday, was that we think there's three things that need to be done. Is one, we need to address what you just said, climate adaptation and resilience. And in the document kind of on the plans for the CPC, what they've set out, their thing seems to really stress mitigation exclusively, or nearly so. So we can, you know, work on adaptation things and decide where we want to go on that. I do still think that we need, as Marnie thinks this also, is figure out how we're going to work with the CPC. And then a third issue that came out of our meeting yesterday was that there seems to be kind of a unique time opportunity now to try to figure out how to maybe educate, in particular, new city council members that will be coming on as to the SEEP and how that's going to be moving forward. There's, I think in particular, the new members have not, to my knowledge, really been involved in climate issues that much.
Risa?
So Brian, I'm a little bit confused about how the goals of the task force, or whatever it is that we call these groups that we're talking about now, it seems that whatever your task force decides to do, that it needs to support what Marnie submitted as the focus for the group.
That's
So I
fine,
don't
we can do
understand-
that too, but we're not, that's not the only thing that we're concerned about.
Pax, when you read what Marnie wrote, I don't see how what you read is contrary to what we're doing.
Okay,
Because if it's about resiliency, climate resilience, adaptation is climate resilience.
mhm.
So I'm not sure how that's contrary to what we proposed. to work with.
Okay, so then if part of that is on raising in terms of climate resilience and the impacts we're seeing of a changing climate, if part of that project is outreach to new council, then I think pull that together as a project in terms of, and then bring that back as an update, and then we can help support that going forward. I totally understand where you're coming from on working with the CPC. We need to integrate and work with all the commissions, and we are working through that. That has been raised with the council and with staff as well. By having these 3 projects, it gives our commission a focus rather than, and like we might want to contact other commissions about some of this, particularly around the water use and conservation and the climate resilience. It won't just be the CPC, it will be all the other commissions. And so I think we have to bear that in mind, that that's part of our integration and part of our work to understand how it might impact on other commissions. So I just worried that you're taking the whole of SEEP in terms of this project, rather than the focus that we all voted on. I voted on outreach around climate resilience. That's what I voted for at the last council as a priority here. So I don't know, how do you think, how can we help you, or how in terms of understanding what we can achieve here?
Well, when I look at the, I just say something because I read the notes from yesterday, Brian. And I'm just looking at what was referenced from the SEEP as to what were climate adaptation and resilience kinds of things that were in the SEEP. One of them was, for instance, educate and empower the public. So that was one that was highlighted and being approached. Another one is promoting climate resilience. Minimize public safety impacts. All of these come with both a policy side and with an outreach side. And oftentimes the outreach can precede policy, which gets the public involved, and then policy can be developed as a result. And then that outreach goes back again to the, back out to the public. And Brian, when I saw what you wrote in the email, I thought was really well thought out and put together. And Stu, I understand your reply was, hey, let's bring it back to the COCC before moving it on to collaboration with the CPC. So I just see it as a premature step, Brian, which was no fault of ours, but it was just like, oh yeah, we've got to bring it back to the COCC to get, input from it. So what direction we're heading, it sounds like from Bex, from what you're saying, is that it's not really following what you agreed to, what we agreed to as a commission. Not specifically about interaction with other commissions, is that what it is?
Oh, I think everything we do should interact with other commissions. I guess the breadth of what the CPC is doing, I didn't necessarily see as an issue here, or worrying about what they're doing. I think we can complement each other quite nicely. It was more focusing on outreach around climate change impacts. I do think that's a key part of what we can do, like informing the community. And I really like the idea about the new councillors, about the changes in the climate we're already seeing, because I think that is a motivating factor to be part of the solution by then reducing emissions. So I do, yeah. So I just think that the focus was more in, it's hard to say the word narrow when you're talking about climate change, because climate change is everything. But the focus for me was more on the outreach around how important it is to be in the face of these changes in the climate that we're seeing, how important it is to be resilient, how it's important to be aware and adapt to this. And it links in nicely to that one strand of the new website and what Stu and Bridget were talking about in terms of preparedness, and just making sure those that are usually the most vulnerable aren't the most vulnerable. I didn't necessarily see it as this big thing linking in with the CPC, but don't get me wrong, I also think we need to link in with every commission. So I'm just wondering how to help you both and Marnie in your next steps of the project, so that, because otherwise I know once it comes to something with climate in the title, it can go in all directions and worrying about SEEP. So I'm just wondering how we can help you in terms of the focus that we all as the commission voted on. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think we can ask Marnie. Marnie's very interested in the resilience issue, and probably would like to, maybe she has, the best ideas on that and where we go for that. But
oh, Marnie's
yeah,
here.
but to me, I mean, it just still brings up the question. So out of the SEEP, is resilience and adaptation then going to by default go to our commission? Because it looks like on the work plan for the CPC, it's all mitigation. So I just, to me, it's more of a big issue from where I sit, and what I'm concerned about is how the plan goes forward. You have two different climate commissions, and it seems like at least this commissioner wasn't aware of what the other commissions are doing. And
I totally understand that. I think there's 30 climate commissions. So the transportation, I hope they take forward some of the transportation things. There are 30 climate commissions, not two. Marnie, you have joined at perfect time. We're just talking about the second project on climate resilience and how we can help. So I read the summary of the project you were working on, and I know climate just gets so wide, and the focus to me that I voted on last month was on climate change resilience and helping community members understand how they could be more resilient and outreach around that to a changing climate. But I know that we're also struggling, not struggling, that's the wrong word. As a commission, we're also trying to understand our links to the implementation of SEEP and how others are implementing SEEP, and so that wider implementation of it. But I was quite comfortable with these three projects. I don't know if you want to give your thoughts on taking forward that the climate resilience project.
Is that you're asking me?
Yeah.
By the three, can you just tell, sorry, because I just joined.
Oh.
So tell me what three
The
Is that from what Brian said?
No, the responsible consumption and single use, climate resilience, and then water use and water conservation. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, so climate resilience was the one that you, Brian and James were working on.
Right. Can you repeat your specific
No,
question?
it was just, so James and Brian had given an update saying there was a focus on climate resilience and adaptation, but then also how that you'd also discussed how to work with the CPC, and that their focus was all on, so I guess I'm straying into another area there that we feel, or you feel their projects are all focused on mitigation when we also need to focus on adaptation. And then I guess just on that, Brian, I don't necessarily feel like I'm worried about where adaptation or mitigation goes. I think it just happens that CPC is focusing on that, and that we're calling out for outreach around adaptation at the moment. And then also the third thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, was about raising awareness around any climate issues with the new councillors. So I was actually thinking that's a really important part of all these projects, because yeah, we've got awareness raising to do on that. So I don't know if you had a change of thought, because just before you joined, Marnie, I was saying how I voted on the climate resilience, but it seemed to be a lot wider in your discussion. So I don't know if you had a change of thought in terms of where you wanted to focus and just how we could help support you as the commission in its entirety.
I don't think it was a change of focus, but when we discussed, what we were trying to do is make sure that whatever we pick up and start moving forward as far as outreach, we want to make sure it's aligned with the CPC and other efforts that are going on and what the city's doing. So, you know, what Stu's priorities are. And then when we went and looked at the information that was given to us about what the CPC is working on, none of that was resilience based. It was all mitigation based, which is great because we need mitigation. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But so it gives us kind of a wider berth of, okay, well, where do we start in resilience? And we don't want to start somewhere and then have someone else come and say, wait a minute, you know, our priorities are different than that. So, you know, obviously we need to be talking to Stu and make sure that we're on the right track. I also went back to the SEEP itself and was just picking out where the resilience pieces are. And a big one was in educating and empowering city staff to make sure that climate change is embedded in really every decision being made. So that's why we talked about really quickly trying to get, especially with the new council, make sure that there's some sort of big kind of push on education and make sure as we have a new council coming in and a new mayor coming in, you know, everybody's back on the same page with the SEEP, because most of those folks really don't know how it was made and what the main priorities are and why the decisions were made the way they were. So it'd be great to move that forward quickly. And then the other piece that we were thinking is important for moving forward with resilience now because of the timeliness is working on minimizing public health impacts and increasing public safety, especially after the fires. We feel like there's some big conversations that are very timely that people want to be having right now. So it'd be a good time to move those forward. So outreach on smoke and fire, on urban heat impacts. And so that would kind of be one of the big main priorities for resilience at this time as far as outreach, but really we want to make sure it's aligned with what the other committees are doing. So, and then I know Brian, I think, had his hand up too, to add to that.
Well, thanks, Marnie. You, I think, voiced it much better than I did. I do have to say I wasn't completely clear, and that's my own fault, in my understanding that this kind of subgroup was only looking at climate resilience. I think when I volunteered to do it with Marty and James, I was thinking in the greater aspect of climate change and issues in the seat, not just climate resilience. So I just want to clear that up.
Can I add a little bit, or Risa, did you have something to say?
It's okay. I'll wait. Go ahead.
I just wanted another piece that we talked about at our last meeting was the fact that the SEEP is intended to move forward equity, and yet it was really tacked on as a little, not quite an afterthought, but something that wasn't well fleshed out. And I don't know what the CPC is doing as far as that, but I feel like resilience is where equity comes in really as a large focus. So I feel like part of what our small groups focus is going to be is, as we do any sort of outreach, how do we make sure that it's reaching the right populations, and how do we actually bring in people of all different walks of life from Ashland to be part of that, to really be leading on that.
Yeah, because you brought that into the paragraph you wrote on the initial project, Maddie, about, it's those vulnerable, most vulnerable to climate impacts will need to be the focus of our efforts. And yeah, absolutely, because it's not everyone that's plugged into the city council and the websites that, the most vulnerable are not every day, and they'll be the one feeling the effects if we have another wildfire and things like that. And something we've been discussing at the university is, after feeling those effects of the wildfire, then you have you've lost your confidence in terms of that community that you're in. So there is fear and anxiety. So knowing you can do something to empower yourself to be more resilient to those impacts is really important. Yeah, knowing that, one, you can mitigate the impacts in terms of your resilience, but then also put in place measures for those resilience. Yeah, just outreach on that, and knowing that there's a community that's aware that that's an issue, I think is good. Yeah. I really like making the new council aware, and in terms of the outreach around it. Risa?
So I just was taking notes, listening to Marnie's description. And so I heard 3 strong focuses for y'all. I don't know if it makes sense, but I would think it would keep you more than busy. But the education of the new council and mayor, the fire resilience piece, and then a plan for inviting more diverse and vulnerable populations into the climate resiliency conversations. And so I'm wondering if it makes sense to write that up, and then to, I don't know the process, but to then check in with the CPC. I don't know how that's done. And then that's a way for the CCOC to have a sense, well, are we on the right track? Does this make sense? How can we help each other and, go forward?
All right.
Anyway, that was just from being an observer. I don't know if that's helpful but. And Stu has done something.
No, so Brian shared his screen.
Oh, Brian did. How did he do that?
Well, as long as we're looking at a screen that we're not hearing about, I'd like to make a comment about this. This is Larry. Everything that's been said about the Climate Resilience Group has touched on the need for a better organized interface with the CPC. And we've been talking about this for 7-8 months, and it seems to me there hasn't been a tremendous amount of progress on it.
Sorry, Larry. Brian, can I just ask you to stop sharing your screen so that we can't hear you.
Yeah, I don't know.
If you can tell me how to do it, I'd be happy to. I don't know how that happened.
You just did it. Very good.
No, I fixed it. It's fine.
Yeah, okay.
And I hit the share screen. Is it stopped?
No, it came back. Nope.
Yeah.
Stop
Don't-
touching
don't-
it now.
Yeah, just
Sorry.
to
So sorry.
I'd just like to complete what, this has been dragged on so long, the lack of clear coordination between the two commissions. And every time we have an initiative, we have this discussion again. And I don't have a solution for it, but I think certainly there has to be a way that certainly the chairs of the commissions can have good, clear, regular communication and have a way that could be transparent, so that if there are other people on either commission that want to be around for that, maybe there can be a meeting, an interim meeting each month, or we could call it a climate happy hour or something, where a limited number of commission members meet, including the chairs, and kind of smooth out this communication. I think it would be something would
Stu,
be
do you
good
want
to
to?
have.
Sorry, Stu had your hand up. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, I think I have a couple of different things I could add here. This has been a really long and drawn out conversation, and I don't know how much of the meeting we want to spend here, but I'll try to keep it quick. When we decided to make two commissions, I thought it was going to be a bad idea because people on one commission would want to be involved in what was going on with the other. And in lieu of that, it was decided to make two with very distinct purposes. So I think every project of the Policy Commission is going to involve the creation or the update of some new policy side project. The intention then for this commission was that every project be focused on education and outreach to somebody, some audience. That could be council, that could be other commissions, it could be citizens, but I think it's really important to keep the two clear. There may be an opportunity to educate people about policies that are being proposed. That's great. There's going to be updates, many significant updates through council that are coming from Policy Commission, and all of those would be better served by broader public engagement. So I think you folks could certainly help increase the awareness of what's happening on the policy side. But I want to really discourage you from trying to get involved in the creating of the policy, because the two groups were designed to operate independently, but mutually supporting each other. So that's all I want to say about that. I mean, mainly if you're looking for confirmation that the project is tuned properly, ask yourself if it's educating a particular audience. I think that might be helpful. I'm not opposed if people still are interested in the idea of merging the two commissions into one super group. That's fine. You need to talk to your counselors and see if they support that. But in lieu of that, I think the two groups need to operate independently and support each other where they can. And I don't suggest at all that you don't talk to the other groups. In fact, I encourage it. If you need to get casual input from another commissioner, by all means, reach out to them. But if you want that commission to do something at the behest of this commission, it has to come back here first. Everyone has to say, yes, let's involve that group in this specific way. And I know that's a drag, but if it doesn't go down that way, then the critics, the budget hawks, the people who don't want the policy projects to succeed are going to pick it apart. And I don't want to be exposed in that way. So it may seem like I'm being a wet blanket. I don't want to be, but I do want to make sure that we follow, what we said we were going to do in the charter and what the public meeting laws require. And I guess the last thing I would say is it's a little bit frustrating to hear that people feel uninformed about what the other commissions are doing, because a lot of work goes into creating the minutes. And I find that more often than not, when people feel uninformed, they haven't tried to read the minutes or watch the videos. So, or contact me and please reach out anytime. And I'd be happy to try to clue in what's going on. CPC does have very ambitious policy set that they're working on. They took a lot of effort upfront to prioritize what they thought they could do in the short term. Those all happen to be mitigation projects. I don't think they're working at the exclusion of resiliency, but it didn't make it into their initial cut of things that was in the backlog. So I would encourage this group to come up with a look ahead of projects in the same way that they have. I think they're a good model to follow if you choose to do that. So anyway, all that, and I think there's a lot of good opportunities for what this group can focus on in the coming year. And I'm happy to like seed that conversation as much as you all want, but I think it's already moving in a good direction. That's all I'm gonna say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Stu. That's really helpful. And yeah, I feel quite comfortable in the space we're in. And I think it's important to be communicating to all commissions and then come back here, yeah, at the appropriate time. And to emphasize the reading of minutes and agendas to understand what's going on in the other commissions. I feel there are other commissions just as important in terms of like transportation and other commissions that we need to be linked into as well. Yeah, I think there is a lot of records out and stuff that support us in the work we're doing, and we need to read that from our minutes through to their minutes. Brian.
Just quickly, so if you look at the resilience and adaptation issue that we were supposed to be focusing on, I mean, what are we supposed to do with that if it's, I mean, we're not going to be making plans for policy, it sounds like. So do we then wait for the CPC to come up with ideas about adaptation and then we educate people about that, or?
No, Risa summed it up well after Mani summed up the project quite well. So I don't know, Mani, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, no, I think we're on a good page, or we're moving in the right direction on that, that we so far have prioritized public health and public safety as what we want to do outreach on, as far as resilience and the specific issues associated with those. And then also, Brian, what you and I talked about last time, as far as outreach, just that the most pressing piece is actually outreach to city council and city staff itself. So I feel like we're moving in the right direction. We have our two kind of main priorities, and we just need to really flesh those out some more. And I don't know if you talked about, Brian, some of the ideas that we came up with specifically for how to do some outreach to council and staff. Sorry that I was late for that.
I don't know if we have time to do that, but it would be,
Okay.
you know, we thought either an e-document kind of summarizing the SEEP and what the responsibility of council might be towards that, or making some type of presentation to them, or both.
James?
Hey, I'm not going to take us long here, but, you know, Bex, you've been bringing up this thing, which is, you know, every commission is a climate commission. And that's one thing we had a lot of conversation on in the past years. How do we get the other commissions to come on board with this whole climate deceit and what they're doing? And so with the CPC reaching out to the Transportation Commission for maybe policy oriented things, it seems wise and prudent. It seems like Marnie and Brian, part of our role would be to put together a plan of action on how to outreach to other commissions around climate resilience and adaptation, because, for instance, transportation is working on a variety of topics that would have direct bearing on adaptation, like e-bikes and other ways adaptation or I'm not framing it very well, but I do think that we can reach out to the other commissions in some way and let them know, and maybe collaborate with them and say, hey, we're working on this climate resilience and adaptation side of things. What are you doing right now that would help us to know what you're doing. It's kind of like what Brian was trying to do, I think, in the letter, in the email. You have all these projects proposed that would include policy, but where does adaptation and resiliency come into that as well? So I see it as a kind of a bigger frame that we could make than just some specific things too, more strategic frame.
Mhm.
Hi.
Hi, Steph.
Hi, I just joining from, I was at the Recology meeting on developing composting for the city. So I'm joining from that. But I hear your conversation, and it's something I've brought up already with the council, looking at the role of commissions and how they relate to each other and how they relate to SEEP and how they relate to having a goals that they're working on each year that are related to the goals that the city develops. Of course, this is going to take a little bit of a new slant with a new council in terms of what they are going to be developing as their goals. So that's kind of a next step, I think.
Thank you. That's helpful. And I know we've spent a bit longer on this, but I think, and I hope everyone else feels that it's been a useful discussion, just helping us with our focus and what we can add. And then we come on to the third project of water use and conservation. Sorry, Larry.
Well, we all rely on water for life, so I'll start with that. And I just want to say that everything that we discussed around water conservation, totally, these things all mesh together. I think it's really, resiliency was something that was a big part of our discussion. But at any rate, we met a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to read through the notes from that, which I think will explain in a brief format what was going on. So Risa and Brian and myself met. We learned from the first off, the headline is we learned that Julie Smitherman is moving on to the Medford Water Commission. She will no longer be on staff after, I think, the first of the year. Risa, is that right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
No.
And
correct.
And so it's very key that her position get filled with an appropriately qualified person. I have emailed Adam Hanks inquiring about what to expect. The water conservation, that position is extremely important to the city. So we as the CPOC should be advocating for that position to be filled, and that to be a priority. And I did receive a response from Adam, and he was anticipating a meeting sometime in the last week with Scott Fleury, the Public Works Acting Director. So I think we're looking, it's going to be probably a few months out. He implied that they would likely be looking at hiring a new person, but perhaps there could be somebody within the city who would move into that position, but that's totally unknown as of at least what I got back from Adam a week ago. We had a good discussion about climate resiliency and how that relates to water conservation issues. Yeah, Risa.
So just to stay connected with what you were just saying, part of what we want to bring to the commission.
Yeah, I'm getting to that. Is that what? I mean, that's in this report. If I could just go through these notes.
I'm not going to say a word, Larry. Go ahead.
Sorry. We had a good discussion about climate resiliency. We talked about the Almeda fire impacting our water supply when the tap was shut down. And I think a lot of people weren't aware of exactly what happened, but we were actually using water from the tap when the fire hit, and then the fire resulted in a breakdown of the tap system. I brought up that some very complex planning and construction is needed in order to make the tap reliable for supplying emergency water needs for Ashland. We had, as a community, thought that we had a functional emergency water backup supply, and it turned out we didn't. So this is sort of a big education piece right here that the new council needs to be aware of. Certainly Scott Fleury will be sharing a lot about this, but it's a huge concern. Currently, the tap connection pump station for Ashland can't operate if we had a power grid failure. There's no backup generator for that pump. So that's just one big item that I didn't know about. This is an area that I'm pretty knowledgeable about, and I assumed there was backup power for the tap for Ashland. It turns out there is not. There is a plan to get it, but when I first asked Public Works about that, they said it might be a couple of years. And then when I pressed them, they said, well, maybe we'll move that up in our calendar. And I told them I thought that was a good idea. There's also a need to upgrade water lines and storage tanks in order to make the tap water more usable for the city. Risa pointed out that this was not the first time that Ashland lost its water supply, as that also occurred in the 1997 flood when we lost the water treatment plant for about a week. The reason we have the tap is that the tap is already purified water, and there was a response to that 97 flood, but now it turned out that the tap needs to become more resilient. Anyway, moving on, Brian and Larry will work on the water conservation article for the March sneak preview, which is due for approval at our next meeting in January. The article was originally going to be a collaboration with Julie, but now Brian and I will have to work on it on our own. Risa suggested that we make contact with Julie, which Risa did, to get resources from Julie to help us in writing that article. And Risa did get that, and she forwarded that to me and Brian. So I feel from looking at that material that we have enough to go on that we'll be able to write a good article. I see, and so at the end of this, I suggest that we invite Scott Fleury to our next meeting, possibly for an update on city water plans and projects, because we don't really have, Julie is a resource. That job may be vacant for a while, the water conservation position. And I think it would be really interesting for us to get an update from Scott. And if not, have him come to a meeting, maybe those of us in the water group might just have a meeting with him in his office to get an idea of what kind of plans he has to address the resiliency issues, and to also address concerns in the community about what is going on with our water. Anyway, that's it. Questions, Risa?
So just in addition to what you said, Larry, a proactive measure that the commission can take is to write a letter of recommendation to the new council and mayor, celebrating all the accomplishments of Julie Smitherman, and to just be proactive about discussing the importance of that position. I'm just mentioning that.
Yeah, that's absolutely great to do. We should do it. Maybe, I mean, do you have is there a way we can do it within the, is there a way we can write a letter, share it, get input? I think it's going to have to wait till the next meeting.
Yeah, this is not for this meeting. This was just part of the reporting, because we're talking about writing an article. We're talking
Sure.
about a letter recommendation.
Yes.
Both of those will be accomplished away from the whole commission, but it will be brought to the commission for their approval.
So my question would be, are there other people besides the three of us who met on water issues who want to, help
They
write that
can
letter?
give their input once we create a letter as the task force. We bring it to the commission. The commission can give its input to it and decide whether or not to support it.
That's fine with
That's
me.
the process.
That sounds good.
Risa, when you say a letter of recommendation, you mean a letter of acknowledgement what Julie's contributed?
It was my thought that as she is outgoing, to use that as the intro to this letter of recommendation, just applauding some highlights of her tenure here, and then just to emphasize the importance of that position, and that position continue to be filled in the city to continue her critical work.
So, okay, so it's not time sensitive that it has to be done before she leaves, because it's,
No.
No, the hope is that our task force could accomplish this and have something to the commission in January or February.
Yeah, I would encourage us to have something in January, because I mean, hopefully, if we can encourage them to move staff to act on filling that position. I have fears in the city that, you know, when there's a vacancy of a non-critical position, that it's seen as a source of revenue.
Well,
And,
hopefully it'll be good motivation for the task force to come up with the letter of recommendation.
I hope.
That sounds great. So I'm thinking having these project updates as a standing item for now, in terms of just to keep the projects moving. If there's anything written to bring back to the commission, the packet for the next meeting is due on the 19th. So they should send it to you and me, Elizabeth. Is that right? For the packet.
Yeah, so I think, Bex, I shared what I just read with you by email previously.
Yes. So
is
if
that
it's just
sufficient?
if it's just a verbal update like that, it doesn't necessarily have to go in the packet.
Okay,
that
but
was
I mean,
really-
that was our formal notes, and
Mhm.
you know, I got some. I think I sent you the revised one.
But if we want to include anything in the packet so people have time to read over, because people prepare for the meeting beforehand with all the links and reading everything over, then just to make sure to get it in the packet. Like if it's the letter, then we can do can do that, just to help everyone in terms of reading it. But if it's just an update on a meeting, I don't necessarily see that we have to write notes of our meetings. I'm very comfortable on the single use one, that we just give a verbal update of our meeting. But once we have an action plan written down, I would love to bring it back here and share it with you all to get your input, suggestions on how else we can do outreach and what we could add to it as well. So I'm just giving that as an example.
Okay, so the water group will have the goal. We'll try to have, I mean, we have the water article Brian and I have to get together on, and we'll hopefully be able to start work on that very soon. And and hopefully a letter will emerge as a recommendation letter regarding the water conservation position that is vacant.
That sounds great. So now we have time for the 20s plenty update. Brian, we have 10 minutes, but I'm hoping you can take a little less.
me?
Yep, on the 20s plenty miles update. You volunteered at the last meeting to be involved.
Oh, okay. I didn't know what the term was called. Well, I think you're referring to the moving the speed limit.
Yes.
So I've been working by Zoom and email with Gary Schaaf from the CPC and Mark Brouillard from the Transportation Commission. I'm kind of come on very late to this project. They've been working very hard on this with the idea of bringing to the city as a recommendation from various commissions to, in general, reduce the speed limit across Ashland by 5 miles per hour. In particular, bringing the speed limit in residential districts from 25 down to 20. And the main emphasis behind this is the fact that there's kind of a logarithmic decrease in death rates and severe injury rates in vehicle versus pedestrian or vehicle versus cyclist accidents as you move the speed limit down. And they're also looking at benefits towards decreased emissions, decreased vehicle miles traveled, economic benefits. There's some evidence that if you decrease the speed limit, the total number of miles driven goes down significantly because people walk and cycle more. I personally am not sure that that would really happen in Ashland. I think the geography of Ashland's a little bit difficult as it's kind of a long, skinny town with hills above the boulevard. And I just don't know how much more cycling and walking would occur, but that's my own opinion. But anyway, we're working on that. And there's going to be an ask of us, I think, by, in particular, Gary Schaaf and Mark, and me, probably based on particularly the safety issue, to try to get the city to adapt a lower speed limit. So I think what they were looking at a timeline would be maybe in January, a more formal presentation, and then maybe take a vote on it then or in February.
Okay. That sounds good. Thank you, Brian. Jamie?
I just had a question about if there were any statistics or data out there about fatalities or incidences of people getting severely injured.
Are you talking about in Ashland per se, or in?
Yeah.
I think there's GIS mapping of where accidents have occurred in Ashland.
With bicyclists and pedestrians, or just accidents in general?
I'm not 100% sure, but I think that there is that data out there.
Okay.
And
I guess I'm asking because I was wondering if there was a rise of those types of incidences that would further warrant.
Yeah, good question, Jamie. I actually came onto this, at the request at the last meeting, so very late. So I'm not even sure really what the impetus was to start this kind of effort.
I know I have heard, and not through this work, but just generally in terms of other work I'm involved in and moving here, that Ashland has one of the highest stats per person for accidents in Oregon. I think it's third highest. I'm not sure. Is any? Yeah. So I have heard that. It's pretty high.
But interestingly, what I do know, at least with bike accidents, is that it's very heavily weighted towards occurring along Siskiyou Boulevard and not necessarily in the residential districts that would be most impacted by this proposal.
It's also good for greenhouse gas emissions.
Well, if it's true that vehicle miles driven decreases.
No, and use of gas driving at a slower speed.
Well, that's not actually necessarily true because cars sometimes get their best mileage at higher speeds, their best miles per gallon. The data that these guys have given me that's very extensive is that if you look at a particular car, there's probably not a benefit one way or the other in terms of decreasing your speed from 25 to 20.
But it depends on the car, make and model, doesn't it?
Well, probably, but overall, it probably doesn't make a big difference. The difference in decreasing fuel consumption is if you buy into the idea that the total vehicle miles driven is decreased because people walk and cycle more because they feel safer at a lower, when cars are driving around them at a lower speed.
Okay, I see that. Risa?
Brian, a question that I have is whether or not there are implications to enforcing this new possibility. Like, does the city have the people power to, like, is it going to put an additional strain on the police department? I'm wondering if whoever it is that's impacted by it, you know, besides being inconvenienced as a citizen, like, will it bear an impact on the police department? And if so, it seems important to get their input about it before it gets too far down the road.
I think that, that's a real good point. I mean, if you want something to work like this, you have to figure in your enforcement capability and the costs of that. And what I gathered right now with one dedicated police officer that the department has towards enforcement of speed issues is that program does not pay for that officer's salary and benefits.
Well, maybe it's because they don't give out enough tickets for all the people that speed.
Maybe.
Anyway, that was just a curiosity for me.
Yeah.
When I think about ordinances, when I think about doing things, you know, policy things, if the city doesn't have the teeth behind it to back it up, then I really question whether that's the best solution, and whether or not there are other means to accomplish a similar thing, though I don't have anything to offer.
Yeah, I think, you have to look at that, and it's a good idea to get the police department's input. There are ways to do it other than having a motorcycle cop with a radar gun. A lot of you have probably driven through parts of Medford where you see a little camper with a sign that says, speed zone, and they're taking pictures of you if you're speeding, and you get a ticket with your picture in the front of your car attached to the ticket.
But that costs money. I mean, there's costs associated with that as well. That's all.
Okay.
Move us on to the next agenda item. Jamie, did you have one?
Yeah, it's okay. It's all right.
Do you want to make a comment quickly before we move
Oh,
on?
I was just gonna say, we have the, I think there's a study out there about the little trailers that we do have. They don't issue tickets, but just that flashing thing that says you're going this amount over the speed limit is effective in getting people to slow down. That's it.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you, Brian, for volunteering to be part of it. And we look forward to hearing next update. Next item, compost. So we sent a memo and discussed this at the last meeting, and it was sent, and in the packet is the response from Adam. And so I was just, this is on the agenda as an update and just any view in terms of where to go next. Adam has said in the letter that he's going to pick up the conversation with Gary at Recology on composting. Steph, because it sounds like you've just come from a meeting.
I did just come from a meeting with Gary and Luis and Bob about what the challenges would be, what the different processes in terms of collection site issues versus the back end processing issue, and whether or not there's any teeth or any idea of looking at water treatment and in the city in terms of composting or waste. That would be a conversation I think that would be good to have with Adam to find out where we are with that. Basically what Gary was saying is that for larger and probably we've all heard this, regional solutions make more sense financially, and in terms of cost for citizens, if everyone were required to do it with the with waste treatment, the cost per everyone would be lower than if only certain people were doing it. If it was an add-on kind of thing.
Okay, that's really helpful. I've probably got an update related not to my role here, but outside of the commission. Was asked to partake in a discussion with community members, and Risa was also asked to be part of that conversation. And one of our next steps is to catch up with Stu about this. And it was about composting and a strategy around it within the city. Not everyone on the call agrees in terms of how or it could or should be done. And there were there's views that we just need to carry on the conversation. It sounds like there's a lot of discussions going on within this commission and then out with this commission, some that I've been involved in, some that I haven't. And maybe a good idea would be our role as a commission to help try and link all these together and have a healthy discussion about what the solution is for Ashland, because I know there's different views out there. I don't know, Risa, you've been part of some of the discussions. I know you've been part of some of the discussions for 2 decades, so I'm coming in a lot fresher with my 1 year. So, I think the discussion, it's so good to have this discussion, but I know there's different views. I've also been consulting with waste experts that used to work with me back in Scotland, where we have rolled out collection of food waste, and it's been really interesting getting their perspective, because we've done, we've got lessons learned after a few years, and we can also see what's happened to towns comparable to the size and the geographic location of Ashland, and also in terms of the treatment infrastructure they've got nearby as well. So I would be really happy to plug that into any conversation anyone's having, and I can even put them in touch with companies here as well, because different composting solutions have been rolled out in Scotland through mandatory legislation. So fascinating, good conversations we could all be having. Risa, do you want to add anything, or Stu, on this?
I can add a short piece about the wastewater concept. I've been trying to have us look at in-vessel aerobic composting for our wastewater solids, which I think would be a really good evolution of the current process. Scott and I have talked about this a couple times. Funding is a question, but I think the current plan is that they're going to be looking at that as part of their operations study that's coming up sometime soon. I don't remember the name of that document exactly, but essentially we're going to look at it on a list of different alternatives and try to get some input from the staff at the wastewater plant as a place to start. But I have to check in with Scott to see what else is going on with that. I do think it's probably a good solution at the wastewater treatment plant. Could be a good solution elsewhere as well. I think there's some definite opportunities for some compost pilots in Ashland, especially if we can create a designated drop-off point where people can voluntarily participate. I think that'd be a good way to start. I think it's worth talking to Recology about the options for curbside pickup, but I have some reservations about the political or financial viability of that at this point. I know that I think it was Toronto put millions of dollars into developing raccoon-proof green bins, only to see the raccoons knock them over and open them up. So I think that, we should talk about the options, but
I think we should
not assume that we know the best way to do it.
Risa?
Just really quickly, one of my hopes with this would be a response from Gary at Recology, who is connected to multiple cities in multiple states that have accomplished this. I don't see it as something that we're at a point that we want to spend money on. But before we can determine whether or not we want to do it, it's really important to know at least 3 choices of processes. And then there's the other level of the system within the city to provide that service. So there's 2 parts to it. And until we can get the information in front of us, it just feels like it's just going to be this conversation that keeps going round and round, and that the best way to assess the opportunity is to get some specific costs associated with the different ways that different places have done it. And Recology, not Recology Ashland, but Recology, the parent corporation, has the expertise and it has the success. And so we're positioned well in Ashland and Talent with that, compared to other communities that don't have that resource.
Jamie?
I would just like to add to that, yeah, I completely agree that Recology has expertise in this area. And I would just like to add that expertise is on a very large scale. So I would say Recology does not have expertise in smaller scale type operations. So that could be somewhat of a benefit, and it could be, make things a little more challenging as well, because, I don't know how much that expertise will apply to our urban-like situation.
Well, they know a whole lot more than anyone else in the city of Ashland, except maybe Bex with her experience in Scotland. I mean, you have to start somewhere. You don't, it doesn't have to be perfect to be able to begin the process of exploring and uncovering what's involved.
Oh no, all I'm saying is Recology does not have expertise on small scale type operations.
Actually, Gary was saying today that he wanted to talk to Bex.
Who was saying that? Who said that?
Gary.
Ah.
Recology, that he was interested in knowing more about. He had heard about you and your experience with that and was interested in a conversation.
Okay, that sounds good. And I think at the moment, so Adam's written back to us, and I think our role at the moment is to make sure we're making all these links and working out, what to do. I think Stu, and I think I've already done this, is I think Bob and Laurie are going to get in touch with you as well about the conversation that we had with them, because I said it was important to plug you into that. Yeah. Risa?
So could we just put this on the agenda to revisit it next month, and just to keep the conversation
in the loop?
alive?
Yeah. I think so. I think that's a good idea where we're at now, because everyone involved in this conversation doesn't want to, like you say, continue to have the conversation. We need to get it to the step where we're exploring options. But as long as it's on this agenda, then it's on our radar as well. So that's a good idea. Okay, new business, commission vacancies. So we have 1 vacancy or 2 vacancies?
One that we have control over, sort of, but the other that we don't, because one is school district.
Stu, have you got an update from Ashland School District if we have someone coming in Steve's place? Oh, Elizabeth, do you have an update?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it was a couple months back. They are very short-staffed and wouldn't be able to provide someone until the end of the school year.
Okay. So then one other vacancy. So we need to publicize this, reach out to other people.
What about the SOCAN people?
Yep, could do.
I think it would be interesting for you guys to think about what skill set you're missing that you would like to have and go try to find that person.
Yeah, I like that
A
idea
mask.
as well.
With a mask on though.
I like that idea. Um,
Lori Kaplan is head of a, kind of the SOCAN Ashland Climate Outreach Program.
And we actually talked to her the other day.
Yeah, I know you did. And did you think about her as being on the commission at all?
I think she's spread pretty thin.
Yeah,
And as far as like to sort of diversify our group, in an ideal sense, it would be maybe a younger person. It would be a person of color. It would be just
yeah. I'm thinking younger.
someone with a nose ring.
Somebody who might be part of the local business community or have
Yeah.
a big stake in resiliency.
Economic and young. I like that idea.
Does anybody know Ben? I'm trying to think of his last name, who works with water in Medford, in their water commission.
No.
He just moved here to Ashland.
Oh, okay. Would he be interested?
Well, I don't know. I just thought of that. He's young. They just had a baby.
Okay. So there are, yeah. Shall we have a think and approach? I think, yeah, business community, someone young. That's a option, Steph. If you want me to put him in touch with me, I'd be.
Sure, I'll let him know and see
Okay.
where he's at with it.
Yeah. And then I think they meet with the mayor and then they come on. Is that how it works?
I guess we'll see in January how it works.
Okay. And okay, if anyone has any other ideas of young diversity to jazz up our commission, then let me know. Wrap up. That item still to be added to the future agenda. And Risa, you've got something.
I just have a really quick thing I should have mentioned in the announcements, really super quick. Those of you that are participants in the Rogue to Go program, we really beg you to go to the rogue2go.com website and just give your feedback to a survey. It might take you
A minute.
5 whole minutes to fill it out, but it will help Stu and it will also help us in the future. We want your input about what you like and what you don't like about the program. Thank you. rogue2go.com.
That's a good plug. rogue2go.com. Is there anything else before we wrap up? Okay.
rogue2go.com.
And again, Risa?
That would be rogue2go.com. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Happy holidays, everyone. I hope you have, in the face of everything we faced this year, I wish everyone a very happy holiday and time with people, whether it's face-to-face in a small bubble or over Zoom. And I look forward to seeing you all in the new year.
Be safe.
Thanks. We'll have a better year
Thank
next
you.
year.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Ta-ta.